to have you with us. You're watching the Urban Debate. I'm Avni Raja. Now, today we put the spotlight on bringing fuel under the ambit of the GST. This is an issue which is highly contentious. It's been discussed over the last several years, but so far nothing has happened. Finally, today it has been on the agenda of the GST Council meeting that took place. But what we understand is that most of the states, and in fact all of the states, have opposed bringing fuel under the ambit of GST at this point in time amid the pandemic. They say it is a huge revenue loss for them, and this is not something that can and should be considered at this point in time. So once again, it seems like this entire issue has gone onto the back burner. Now, the revenue loss for states and the centre, in fact, is a serious issue. But what is also equally, if not more grave at this point in time, is the skyrocketing fuel prices that we've been seeing over the last several months, time and time again. There are huge ramifications of these high fuel prices, from how it impacts yours and my wallets to the larger impact of inflation that it creates. Now, experts across the board, including the Reserve Bank of India, have flagged off this very issue. They say that fuel prices must be brought down at any cost, and otherwise it is going to create serious implications going forward. And also, Reserve Bank of India governor has in fact said that the centre and states need to come together to solve this issue and to bring down fuel prices. Now, one way, of course, of doing this is bringing fuel under GST, which we have raised time and time again. But before getting to that, I just want to give you some perspective here of what all of this really means. So for now, since Jan 2021, the price of petrol has been increased 39 times. The price of diesel has been increased 36 times. Now, 56% of what you pay per litre of petrol is actually taxes. Taxes that go both to the centre as well as the states. But if petrol and diesel both are actually brought under the GST, under the ambit of the GST, it means, let's just take an example of the prices in Delhi. It will come down to 56.44 rupees a litre from 101 odd rupees that it is currently. Diesel prices will come down to 55.41 rupees a litre from 88 rupees that it is. So that's a fall of 37% in diesel and fall of 44% in petrol prices that we'll see in Delhi. And this is taking into account the highest bracket of GST, that is 28%. But obviously, it looks like this is not going to happen anytime soon. So the big question really is what it is going to take now to bring fuel under GST. Will the centre and states ever be able to come together to make this happen? Because GST means one tax rate that should be applicable across the country for everything. That's really not the case right now. And on the other hand, the other question, big question is, if this is not going to happen, what can be done to actually bring down the fuel costs at this point in time? And we'll understand what the economic ramifications of that are through this debate. But let me straight welcome my panel who's joining in today. We've got Anand Gurumurthy of the BJP who's joining us, Atul Londe of the Congress, Dr. Bura Gaud of the TRS who's with us, Professor Aman Agarwal, an economist who will give us the economic perspective, and Subhomay Bhattacharjee, consulting editor of Business Standard, who's with us as well. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us on this edition of the Urban Debate. Subhomay, I want to really start with you here because this is something that, we've been covering for several years now. In fact, since the GST came into effect, the question about whether fuel can be brought, should be brought into it. All right, we seem to have, we will just connect with Subhomay in just a minute, but let me then go across to Anand Gurumurthy here. Anand Gurumurthy, we know at this point states have not been okay with bringing fuel under GST. It was finally on the agenda of the GST Council today. But what does this mean now? Is it going to be brought up again? Is it just going to be put on the back burner?
See, this one thing is affecting every common man in this country, and it's not just the ruling party. Everybody is seeing this, and everybody is looking into this from different perspectives. And it's a very good thing that for the first time it has been talked in the GST Council in a physical meeting. And in the coming days, I think it will be talked again and again as the GST collection goes up. When the government can compensate through GST tax collection, whatever subsidy is being given through the fuel subsidy, then I'm sure the decision will be to reduce the burden on the fuel. So this way, government will take some decisions in the coming days. But again, in the next GST meeting, again it will come up, and it is going to be discussed again and again. It's a good thing that states have started discussing it. Till now, it was like, okay, let's not discuss this subject at all. So now it's like, okay, it's part of the agenda. I think it's a very positive moment.
Okay. Atul Londe, what is your opening comments on this issue? Because obviously we've seen that states are not at all comfortable with doing this right now at this point in time, given the revenue loss that states will have to pay. But what will it take for states to actually come on board?
Let me make it very clear the stand of my party. We are also for the fuel and oil, all crude oils, petrol, diesel should come under GST. This is Congress stand. But as far as why states has gone against the decision of getting all these commodities in under GST needs to be given a thought properly, because Narendra Modi ji talks about cordial relationship between center and state. He always talks about cooperative federalism, but he does it differently. Why states are not ready to given up their rights on the taxes which they impose on petrol and diesel needs to be given another thought. Then only it become possible whether to come under GST or not. This is what all I have to say about
okay.
Bringing.
All right, Dr. Bura, if I can come to
yes.
Yes. Okay. All right, Dr. Bura, your comments here in terms of the stand of your party at this point.
Regarding the GST are continuing as the VAT and excise duty, the common man problem is the price of the diesel and petrol, because almost 90% of this revenue, quantum of the revenue generated by the VAT and excise, both by the center and state, is almost 6 lakhs for revenue is generated for the central government. And if you take it to 40% of that, 40% overall the tax in the per liter of the diesel or petrol, it amounts to roughly 3 to 4 lakhs crores for all the states put together. So collectively, it will be loss of, suppose you make it a 28% of the GST also, even if you, that means 100 rupees is becoming 56 rupees. So that means effectively 40 rupees is less. So let it be state or center. So then who is going to compensate this revenue? That is the number one. Number two big problem is, now states have a limited flexibility after the introduction of GST. The country is literally running on the liquid economy. That means the revenue generated on the taxes on the petrol and diesel, and also on the alcohol and spirit. This is the reality. If you take any state government, including the central government, this is a reality. Suppose you are going to include the GST, one is states will be losing their flexibility. Number one, that is a affront to the cooperative federalism. After all, what is left for the states? Only the taxes on the diesel, petrol, and the alcohol. And the second thing is, this is a huge gap, revenue deficit. Who is going to fulfill? So, unfortunately, in the country, our country, you must understand, our country mostly runs on the indirect taxes rather than the direct taxes. Because people don't pay the tax. Most of the people who really have the income also don't pay the tax. The governments, whether it's a NDA now or previously UPI, any government are resorting to this high indirect taxes to generate the tax. But unfortunately, these indirect taxes are mostly paid by the poor and middle class, whereas the direct taxes are mostly paid by the rich and upper middle class. In a way, by reducing the paid petrol and diesel taxes, the poor and middle class are going to be benefited, because not even 10% of the rich and upper middle class are not going to pay, because most of the people who travel on the road are the middle class. This is the reality. So the central government has to take, without curbing any freedom of the revenue for the states, and with the proper long term. It cannot be introduced like a note bandi. It cannot be note ban like a note. It will be create another havoc. It should be gradual. It should be
All right, Dr. Bura, my
consensus.
apologies for interrupting you. We just want to listen into what Finance Minister is saying. She's in fact speaking on this very issue. Let's cut across.
Today it was brought on to the table for discussion. Members spoke very clearly that they wouldn't want it to be included in the GST. Several members said it very clearly. And in fact, it was also clearly asked as to how we will go to the court to report on this matter, because the court has said within a couple of months we have to come, 2 months or something, we have to come back to it to say, have we done as per their instruction? So it was decided by the council that we shall go back to report to the court that indeed as per their desire, as per their direction, the council had it on its agenda today and it was discussed, clearly stating that the High Court of Kerala has desired that this matter be brought to the GST's notice and discussed. It was discussed. This will be reported to the High Court of Kerala that we have discussed, and the GST Council felt that it wasn't the time for them to bring the petroleum products into the GST. So we shall report that to the court. There was a detailed presentation made on the revenue generation aspects, correction of inverted duty structure aspects, and also the various ways in which the revenue neutral position, which was somewhere at 15.5% at the time of introduction of GST, has steadily come down to 11%. Revenue neutral is to keep it at 15.5. But today, actually, in reality, we are at 11.6. And actually, therefore, if revenues are coming down and you think it's not really helping in overall GST collection, what was arrived at the time of introducing GST has been knowingly or unknowingly brought down because of reduction in the rates of some items, resulting today that position is 11.6 when you actually have to be somewhere at 15.5. So members did discuss on those items as well. And in the process, the actual position of compensation which is being given since the introduction, which is being given even after Corona coming in, borrowed amounts, back-to-back giving of compensation have all been presented during a presentation done by the Joint Secretary, Revenue. So states have been given a complete picture of what it is going to be. As it is, as things stand, for paying back and servicing the loan taken for the back-to-back arrangement with which last year we were able to give the states monies. And from last year, some dues are still there. Whereas this year, because the revenue collection has improved, we are still able to service even with a little bit of borrowing. So in order to service the borrowed amount, in order to service the borrowed principal and interest, from July 22, even last year the council had allowed, saying, yes, since compensation has to be paid only from cess collection and it is not to be paid by drawing from the Consolidated Fund of India, it was allowed, even it was decided by the council even last year, that cess collection may be extended beyond July 22 to pay for the principal and interest which has got to be borrowed, which has been borrowed back to back, it's been given to states. So a picture of how much has to be paid back, how much has to be given in terms of from the collected cess, July 22 onwards by extending the cess collection, how long will it take for the entire borrowed amount to be paid was also discussed. So for the total amount borrowed last year and for the total amount which is expected to be borrowed this year, and I'd like to remind our friends in the media that for the total amount to be borrowed this year, 75,000 crores is already paid up upfront to the states for this year's count. So, for the amount borrowed last year and given back to back, and for the amount which is going to be borrowed this year and or again given back to back, put together, for how long does this cess have to be collected and paid for repaying the loan? That also was discussed. Detailed financial statements were also worked out. So as things stand now, this collection of cess purely to pay the loans which have been taken will itself run till 26 March. March 2026 is till when we have to collect the cess purely to pay back the loans taken between 2020-21 and 21-22. So this has been clearly explained. There are a few other things which are only getting into details, which I'll explain even as you all ask questions. If there's anything that I've left which has to be included in the opening statement, I'll ask the Revenue Secretary to join in.
Well, you covered it exhaustively. There are some detailed items which are there in the press code. Now we are opening the floor for question.
All right, that was the Finance Minister there talking about the GST Council Meet and very clearly saying that all states have said that this is not the right time to bring fuel under the ambit of GST right now. And this was discussed in the council, it was on the agenda, but this is not something that's going to happen right now. In fact, let me go across to Subhamoy Bhattacharjee, who's with us now. Subhamoy, this has, of course, been a very contentious issue that has been spoken about for a long time now. And even now, it seems that simply the fact that it was part of the GST Council Meet and on the agenda of the GST Council itself is an achievement. I have no idea when the centre and states will actually be able to come together to make this happen.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but of course, we did not expect the decision on GST to be taken today. As you rightly pointed out, the very fact that it's there or it was there on the agenda is itself should be considered a fair amount of movement ahead in terms of, bringing the centre and the states together. But it definitely would not be there because the states were also anticipating what the finance minister said later, that the cess will continue, which means that essentially that's another acknowledgement that the pressure on the state finances will be fairly strong. So given the current circumstances, it was unlikely that petrol and diesel would become part of GST. So that part was fairly. I mean, what I might call the backroom discussion. In fact, the important part about entire discussion is that often the positions that ministers take outside beyond the meeting and what they say in the meeting differ. So the very fact that states have not agreed on the GST to bring GST levy on petrol and diesel shows that that's exactly what happens when they do their calculations. Remember, if you look at the state level borrowings, with the data for the latest data shows, it shows that the state level borrowings have slightly eased off. The difference in the spread between the center and the states have come down, but it is still at a fairly elevated level. In that circumstance, obviously, the states will be very leery of any change that drastically changes their financial architecture. So, yes.
Okay. All right. Professor Agarwal, the fact is that the issue of high fuel prices is extremely important and has far-reaching ramifications, because you're not just talking about the fact that petrol is above 100 rupees in large part of the country, but the repercussions that has, the domino effect it has on everything else. If this is not clearly happening anytime soon, if you can just help us understand why and how it's important to bring down fuel prices at this point in time, because it's something that's been flagged off by everyone, including the Reserve Bank of India governor.
Yes, you rightly pointed out in the beginning also, almost about 2 years back, the average taxation on a fuel price was between 55% to 65%, varying from state to state, given the different state taxes which are there. As of today, given the increases which have happened in the last 1.5 years, is ranging between 65% to 75% state to state. And that is a huge component. And this is, when the oil pool account has an accumulation fund, because oil pool account was suggested by us at the Indian Institute of Finance way back in '89 when N.D. Tiwari, the finance minister then, had implemented it. And that account was for the surplus funds collected on account of the oil prices in terms of differentials of the international prices and the local prices which are there. And we have known that for the last 4 years, the prices had actually dipped down to almost $20 a barrel when the contracts which are there signed for about 4 to 5 years were renegotiated and then resettled at a lower price, which was being bought by the Indian government from various countries across the globe. And that is counting to almost about 98 to 99% of our oil needs are actually purchased through those forward contracts. Only about 1 to 2% is purchased from the open market at current rates, which is required. And that also is 3 months in advance, because the oil which is purchased comes into our cars after processing and all, which takes about 2 to 3 months before it comes to the end user. So it is very critical today, given the fact that the way inflation is building up, the way everything is going up, because once the prices rise, it will be difficult. Once the indirect framework of cost factor builds in, it will be very difficult to bring it down in due course. And that will be a huge cost. We will lead to a hyperinflation position, which will be very difficult to bring down at any stage, because corporates, once they start pricing their products, individuals, when their salaries go up, they are not ready to accept a lower salary despite the cost of oil, which may go down. So if I suppose get 100 rupees as salary, and tomorrow, because of the cost of price, I start demanding 125, and tomorrow if I get 125, I am not going to bear a cut in my salary, even despite the fact that the prices may go down. That would mean there would be a major domino effect on the price structuring and the inflationary factor, because almost 55% of the GDP even today in India comes from the services sector. So it is the services sector plus the other sectors which are going to have the rebounding effect. Yes. Transportation, which consumes a huge chunk of it. So once the transporter raises its price for transporting a good from one place to the other, he is not going to reduce it back to a lower level despite the prices of fuel going down. And we saw that when LPG was introduced and large number of transportation vehicles, small transportation vehicles, passenger transportation vehicles had actually introduced LPG-based cylindered cars, but they did not reduce the price for their transportation, which was there. So they were earning their profit margins more, but they did not reduce the price, despite the fact that they have moved down to a lower cost function-based fuel.
Right.
This is critical at this stage. And it is not something which is brought down, although
yes,
Honorable
absolutely.
Finance Minister...
And we're seeing that happening, Professor Agarwal, even in terms of the fuel prices, because, the excise on petrol and diesel were increased when the oil prices crashed, but they haven't been reduced after the prices went up. But in fact, Anand Gurumurthy wanted to make a point. Anand Gurumurthy, go ahead, please make your point. But also just to add my question here is, the point is that there isn't enough, why isn't there enough recognition being given to the fact that this high fuel prices is having huge impact on, the common man. It has a ripple effect on the economy as well. It just seems like there isn't enough importance and recognition by the center on this issue.
No. Well, everybody understands that, and from the ground level, it is being talked about, and it's unfair to say that center is not giving importance. Center is giving importance. Center is aware of this, but see, first of all, as Professor Aman explained, why was this introduced? Why was this surcharge thing introduced first? It was introduced a long time ago to, with a populistic measure in place. And over a period of time, people took some more measures to just, ensure that the burden is transferred to the future. But Modi government is very clear about this. We don't want to transfer the burden to the future. We don't want to take this and say that 10 years down the lane, some other prime minister or some other government manage this issue. Let us be very clear. Okay, we have to manage this in the next 4 to 5 years. If at all this corona thing had not happened, we were very much on the path, because in 17 when GST was introduced, even then people were like demonetization happened in 16, 17 you have introduced this thing, something will happen, all this they were telling. But in spite of that, we were going on a good trajectory. Then the corona happened, and because of that, our economy worldwide came to a standstill in many places, and we also had lockdowns to save lives. And then there's an extra expense on the government to give vaccines free of cost to such a huge population. So all that is being taken care, and along with that, food security being taken care of, and all these things. Narendra Modi government is managing things at the grassroots level and at the macro level also. But as Professor Aman says, right now, even if we reduce it by, let us say, 5 rupees or 10 rupees, okay, the impact will be there. But to do that, at least in the GST Council, the states have to talk about it. They have to talk where the revenue they are going to cut. Nobody is ready to cut the revenue. Okay, everybody says center is not looking into it, but this has to be understood in a way, who is taking the benefit out of here and what is the benefit that they can leave. They have to talk about it openly, not just in the GST Council, even in the parliaments. Parliaments don't run because of the opposition, continuously shouting on issues which are irrelevant. Only during the parliament season they come up with issues, then the issues just died out and nobody talks about them. Instead, actually, these are the burning issues which they have to come into the parliament and start discussing about it, but they don't do it. So continuously, this is a policy paralysis that is being created by the opposition.
Anand Gurumurthy, please pardon me, but this is exactly the point I'm trying to drive home here. It always becomes a center versus state. The other panelists are saying that the center is not doing enough, and you are saying that the state governments aren't doing enough, and both sides are right. But it is time for both sides to come together and figure out a solution. But that is really not happening, because it's always a blame game that erupts.
I'm not blaming the state governments or taking the blame on the central government. I'm just trying to tell that people have to sit together and figure this out. But that's not happening in the GST Council. When a court orders and this thing comes, order comes, and it is proposed in the GST Council by the chairman, they have to take it seriously. They have to discuss it. Instead, they say, no, this is not the time. They should discuss it. They should start discussing on this step by step. Can I reduce even 1 rupee? They have to do that. Why can't they reduce 1 rupee? They have to talk about it. They are not talking about that. See, Professor Raman clearly says, when it goes into hyperinflation mode, okay, this is the problem. So when Professor Raman clearly says, they have to talk about it and come to conclusions. Every state is like, no, we are not coming into GST ambit. We just want it to be as is, how is. So this is where, there is a policy paralysis being pushed as an agenda by these opposition guys, which has to stop in India. They have to understand. They have to come to the table, talk about it, and then things move forward.
Okay, all right. Let me go across to Atul Londe, who's also waiting to respond to you. Please go ahead.
This is not about BJP versus Congress. This is about the cooperative federalism, and this is about between center and the state. Why center has increased excise duties on petrol and diesel when the international prices were going down? It has gone down even minus, even less than zero during first COVID wave. And if you calculate it, it is around $41 to $42 a barrel average in the last 7 years. But what they have collected near about 25 lakh crores out of this. And the the most important point is they are imposing more cess. The road infrastructure cess has been started by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, which was 1 rupee till 2014 when Dr. Manmohan Singh left the office. These people have increased to the tune of 17 rupees. Now it is 18 rupees. In the last budget, Nirmala Sitharaman ji has imposed agriculture infrastructure says 4.50 and 2 rupees on diesel and petrol. So imposing taxes after taxes and cesses, which doesn't fall under divisible pool, they are not divided into center and state. The second point is states are being stripped of its centrally sponsored schemes. If you take an example of Maharashtra, we have not received 96,000 crores from the central government as a part of GST compensation and a centrally sponsored scheme. So you are literally stripping of state governments of their finances, their right to impose the taxes, and you are passing off the buck to the state government, saying that it is because of the state government's inflation is going on and on. Why don't you given up your cesses?
Yes, that's a fair point, Atul Londe, and I will ask Anand Gurumurthy that question. But the fact is that GST aside, why don't states start reducing the cost of their taxes on petrol and diesel? Why is it all the burden only on the center? The center has the same question to answer, but even I'm asking, why can't states also take that first step?
Avni, let me tell you one thing. Just try and understand. State governments are literally stripped of their revenues, and central government is not following the principle of cooperative federalism. State governments are asking for compensation dues. Compensation dues have not been paid by the central government. And what the central government is doing, they are stripping off RBIs, they are taking contingency fund away, they are not looking after NPAs. Everything is in a doldrums. Everything is running out of the control of central government, and they are expecting state governments to reduce taxes.
Let's not talk about everything under the sun here. We are talking about a very specific issue. We are talking about a very specific issue, and I want to take that same question to Dr. Bura as well. Dr. Bura, why is it that states cannot take the first step and reduce the burden on their own citizens?
Basically, if you look at the press meet of Nirmala ji, what is the exact wording she has used? All the state government has vehemently opposed the move to include a GST. Do you really think majority of the state governments are run by the BJP? Majority of the government. Do you think any state chief minister has the guts to oppose the Modi ji decision if really the central government takes the decision? No. No, 100% I can say. Because
but they have, right? By opposing the GST by opposing bringing fuel into GST, even BJP-led states are not convinced right now. So that is a fact. Obviously, when finance minister says all states have refused this, it obviously means that they are not okay with it.
No. Please listen to me. It may look obviously on the outside they are opposing it. If the central government, if our Prime Minister Modi ji really takes a decision, let us sit together, let us forget about the cesses, let us state and center have a common one country, one tax. We have got a GST. Same way, even one petrol, one tax. Okay, little margin for the transport, depending on the distance between the supplier to the consumer. If really taken decisions, do you think anybody is going to oppose? No. Because the problem is, finances are very critical for the both center and state. For the people's sake, everybody may talk that we want to reduce, the common man is suffering, that is the public consumption. But the reality is, if the liquid, I use the word liquid economy, the economy which is mostly run on the petrol, diesel and alcohol. If this is lost, the states absolutely will lose their flexibility, their revenue, they will lose their freedom. Every month they will have to sit with a begging bowl in the Delhi. Probably their finance minister will have to sit everybody in the Delhi, not in their respective state capital. I think if really we wanted, we should have a comprehensive solution, not a political solution or blaming on each other. That is what I think should be happen in the long term, not just. And this also, you remember, Minister Nirmala Sitharaman specifically told, we have kept in the agenda because High Court of the Kerala has asked us to do it. You understand the context, because the coast has directed
All
to
right.
discuss.
All right.
We are discussing.
Point taken, Dr. Bura. But, yes, point taken. I want to pick up on another aspect here. And Professor Agarwal, if you could come in on this. The fact here is that right now, the Reserve Bank of India governor has highlighted this issue as well. He specifically and categorically said that this has inflationary pressures and it is not good in the long run. And right now, the interest rates have been stagnant for quite a while. And at this rate, their inflation target has also been increased. Inflation, if the interest rates go up, it is going to be worse for the center. The center will have to spend more to service their debt than the revenue loss if they reduce the petrol and diesel or if they reduce the fuel prices.
You're very correct on this. In fact, it's not only the interest cost which is there. You're actually making the economy inefficient. You're going to make people bear the cost and they will ultimately stop working, because if they are not able to generate revenue, why would they want to work? And if their costs are going to go up so much in a competitive environment which we exist today, where we are actually seemingly having huge competition from overseas goods coming through China at dirt cheap prices, where are we going to really see the Indian industry function and move forward? And if that is going to happen, you will see, forget the taxes. What has happened with most states is they are completely dependent on taxes. Why don't we pick up models like some of the European countries, including Singapore, where they actually shed away taxes to even begin with, and they looked at how to go about building the potential of an economy and then generating the growth and the GDP and the prosperity for the country. If you're going to base everything on taxes, then it was good when we got independence. We had 98% tax. Let us start doing that again. If taxes is the basis to go about functioning, I think that is something fairly wrong to go about doing so. And what RBI governor is putting forward is critical, because as of today, we are at the edge. And if we continue like this, we can go to 200 rupees. People will happy to pay and they will still work on it. But what will it bite on tomorrow? It's going to kill the economy in the long run. Forget the GDP. Please understand, the real GDP is the effective GDP minus the inflation rate which we are actually bearing on. So if the inflation rate goes to 7, 8, 9%, and even if we grow at 12%, what effective GDP are we growing at? What are we giving to the people at large? The rich people will still survive. What about the poor, the middle class, the lower middle class? You're actually creating a huge burden for them. And it is right. The GST Council, in the first meeting, in the first year itself, they said, we are going to try and bring in alcohol and petrol. So the issue was there in the agenda. It was kept multiple times. I don't understand why Madam Finance Minister is saying it the first time. And she's actually bringing it to the reference that Kerala court is actually putting it. So we are doing it. So we are going to inform the Kerala court. So there is a clear intention where the finance minister of the government is also not wanting to have it as part of the GST. Forget the states. It's a clear indication from her wording, which she has said, we will intimate this to the Kerala court. That means
actually, you've raised a very important point, Professor Agarwal, because for the center, it's very easy to say that states are not agreeing to bring, fuel under GST. We are okay with it. So that's a very, easy cover to hide behind. But Subhamoy, I just want to take that point forward before I go across to Anand Gurumurthy to respond to all of this. The fact here is that one part is what the economic aspect that Professor Agarwal was also talking about. But from a consumer point of view, if we bring down the petrol prices, the diesel prices, that much more money will be in the hand of the consumer. And at this point in time, the consumer confidence spurring the economy, more consumer spending is what is required. That can actually happen and take forward what the recovery that we're trying to achieve right now.
Want me to come along? Hello.
Yes, sir.
So, Bumai, that question was for you.
For me? Okay. So first of all, I would think that what dear friend Aman is saying is wrong. For the simple reason that inflation is not happening because of petrol per se. The problem is that the GDP has contracted. And when the GDP has contracted, RBI since last year has been putting in excess money for various reasons into circulation because of the repeated borrowing of G6 back and forth. The amount of liquidity that is there in the economy is much higher than what the economy can handle. When you have higher liquidity, you have got lower output, it is obvious that inflation will be higher. That is the reason why inflation is higher. Petrol and diesel play only a partial role in it, and it is not even the major role. For instance, when petrol and diesel prices were reduced earlier, in any time, this government, earlier government, how many companies went about reducing the prices of their products, which they said had been affected because of higher prices of petrol and diesel? No one. So essentially, that is not a very good excuse. It is also not a very good reason that petrol diesel price cut will be, by bringing it into GST, will help. If what RBI governor has clearly said in February is that there needs for coordinated work between the center and the states to bring petrol prices down. It's a coordinated work. It can't be one person doing it. And that coordination means both need to reduce. So if one reduces, the other one doesn't reduce, that will not help. So essentially, you see the petrol diesel cut is not the primary reason why inflation is there. If that was there, then the inflation should have been going up consistently. The very fact that food inflation comes down, core inflation keeps on going up, shows that there is much more to inflation than petrol, diesel. And as I said, it is the liquidity issue, the huge liquidity which RBI has, for various reasons, pushed into the economy, because of which yields are low, and that is a major challenge which is affecting the economy. Unfortunately, GST Council is not the right place because ministers actually take a political position, they don't look at this thing, but the problem comes there. And my third point is that if we are talking about environmental issues, I'm not very sure whether cutting petrol diesel prices is the right way to incentivize the economy. We are talking about green recovery. If that is so, petrol diesel prices at the bunk level, cutting it down substantially. First of all, if you cut it marginally, there won't be any effect, which all the panelists are agreed on. If you cut it down substantially, we are actually going to trigger off a pollution spiral, which we do not need at this point. So I'm not sure whether this argument to cut petrol diesel prices through GST, first of all, it works. Secondly, even if it came in, that's not the way it will really cut unless the center and the states are out of the financial hole they are in. And third, as I said, the problem is with the RBI, not with the center or the states as far as inflation is concerned. That's all.
Okay, all right, fair enough, Subhamoy, in terms of, you're saying that it's not going to be the solution, but it is, of course, a contributing factor to inflationary pressures in the economy right now, and which is why, like you pointed out, the Reserve Bank of India has called for the center and states to come together and address this issue and reduce prices. But Anand Gurumurthy, the larger issue here of the fuel prices, the high fuel prices that Professor Agarwal was also talking about.
Avni, can I raise 2 points? And
okay,
then
please. All right. Please go ahead.
I'm just not agree with Shubhamoy in 2-3 points. The consumer confidence index is going down only because their purchasing power has been cut down because of demand syndrome and supply side attraction of the government. They have created liquidity in the market, but nobody is ready to take the loans because there is no demand in the market. And the reason being, people's purchasing power has been cut down. If you have created liquidity in the market, that should have gone into the hands of consumers directly, which has been suggested by Honorable Rahul Ji, that we should at least give 7,500 rupees a month for 6 or 7 months to the consumers who don't pay tax. This was his suggestion. This would have definitely created demand in the market, and at the same time, if you reduces the sales on petrol and diesel, it would have further generated the purchasing power of the common man, and that would have compensated the inflation as well as the demand in the market and creation of jobs. That has not happened, and that is why only liquidity in the market is creating inflation. This is what all I have to say. Why this central government has resort to these kind of measures, which other countries have.
Okay. All right. Yes, Anand Gurumurthy, please go ahead.
See, first of all, that suggestion, whatever Atulji is doing, has always been done in this country, and now we are suffering because of those things, because of all that potatoes that were pushed
Sorry,
inside. We
Anand ji,
got
it was
chips.
only 1.5%. Fiscal measures were taken out of only. It
We have
was only
seen the
1.5%.
subsidy
Fiscal.
Raj done by Congress, so
No,
that's
no,
a
no.
different point in discussion. So I'll stick to GST. And if you see, we are still having a deficit of
Yes.
about 30,000 crores every month. Okay, if we increase the GST, if state and center work together, okay, come up with more resources for people to earn and more to spend. It's always, the debate is about GST, petrol and diesel under GST, or diesel one GST, one rate. That is one debate. Instead of that, whatever is the slab that has been agreed upon, it was not agreed by one person or one party. It was agreed by all states and by all parties to come up with the GST regime. Now, once this has happened, why not increase the income by giving more resources? There are so many things. See, ease of doing business, if you see, without the states implementing it at the grassroots levels, it won't happen. But if you see many states which are against in the opposition, right, they don't implement the things properly. Ultimately, if you see the GST collection of states, you will clearly understand. When you see the numbers itself, you'll understand what is the potential of a state to contribute and what it is contributing. When you see that, you will clearly understand that a policy paralysis is being brought about by some regimes just to ensure that the country suffers. So this is the reason why we are still not able to do it. One is this reason, and the second thing is, of course, the corona period was hard on many state governments. We understand that part. So we have to go hand in hand, both center and state, whether it is BJP government or any other government, and make sure that our financials are sound and secure. If people start play politics in this, that is where we are getting launched into a policy paralysis, which will not happen because we have a very strong government and which is managing it in a very good fashion. And of course, slowly and steadily, the common man is understanding this. He is utilizing the resources that is being pushed towards him. And slowly and steadily, if you see, even during the corona period, even during the second wave, slowly and steadily, the GST collection is increasing. If we increase it by another 20 to 25,000 crores, we are in the safe zone. After that, of course, price reduction in the most common commodity, petrol and diesel, will also happen. Many other things can happen because the GST Council will also have more money in their hands to give out in different places and manage the things.
Okay, all right, but Anand Gurumurthy, very quickly, why has the center not reduced the excise? After increasing it when the global prices had crashed, that time there was a significant increase. But once it reversed, why hasn't that been reduced?
Yes, it's a point which I missed.
Allow me
also
to answer.
If you raise
oil bond question, then allow me to answer.
Yes, please, Atulji, you can.
I know that you are going to raise the question of oil bonds.
Okay.
You are yourself getting into trap.
See, Atulji came up with this, and I want to answer this in a very candid manner. Let me tell you, during the time when the demand was lowest, that is in the month of April and May in last year, when the demand was lowest, at that time the petrol price had shot down because there was lockdown in many European countries and even in India. Because of that, and even in China, there were lockdowns going on. So the demand of petrol and diesel had come down, the petroleum products, and prices had just rock bottom. But still, the great government that we had of Congress for 10 years had given us oil bonds, which we had to repay. So we had to keep the price at the same level. Whatever was
Avni, allow me to answer this.
No. I'm sorry, Anand Gurumurthy. I'm not going to accept the issue of oil bonds that keeps cropping up. It keeps coming up as an excuse. It cannot be. It is 1 rupee a litre, which is the burden of the oil bonds.
Please, don't use the words.
No, I'm sorry. You cannot keep bringing this up. This is such a small portion. This cannot be an excuse for keeping petrol and diesel prices so high.
Avni, I'll ask you one thing.
Avni,
okay?
Allow me to answer. I'll listen to him
simple,
quietly. And allow me to answer this question. This is simply foolish logic.
1 minute. You can answer.
Yeah.
You can always answer.
Sure.
I'll ask you one question, okay? 10 years ago, if you take a 1 crore loan, okay, and you have still borrowed 1 crore and you have not repaid it, You have to repay it, right? At some point in time, because you are not having enough income, you cannot say I want to repay it. So this is a simple thing, okay? Simple thing. It's not something which is repeated unless and until we repay the petroleum bonds, the great thing that
Please allow
Congress
me
has
to
done.
answer.
This will keep happening. And you will have debates every month, so we have to
No,
tell
all
what
right,
is the real.
Anand Gurumurthy, I take your point, but I want to just put down some numbers here. I want to just put down some numbers here and put this into perspective. In the last 6 years, 1 minute. In the last 6 years, there has been a 300% hike in excise duty. The excise on petrol has gone up from 9.48 rupees in 2014 to 32.9 rupees in 2021. That is up 206%. Diesel is gone up from 3.56 rupees in 2014 to 31.8 rupees in 2021. And that is an increase in excise of 377%. Now, coming to the oil bonds, 3% of the total annual excise from petrol and diesel is paid for oil bonds. So while yes, it is a small amount, and while yes, your logic of, over the last so many years and it has to be paid out, all that is taken into account, it cannot be the reason that is put forth every single time for this. It just cannot.
Let me put it in a straightforward manner. Okay, the question was, when the petrol prices had come down globally, why we could not, why we could not reduce the petrol price? Simple, straightforward answer. The consumption had gone down.
Let me make it more simple. Let me make it more simple, Anand Gurumurthy ji, because you are going on substantiating your points without having any proper logic. Let me explain it. It was 1,31,000 crore rupees of petrol bond that was issued. It is the concept given by the Honorable Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, because we don't insult anyone. We respect everyone. Number two, the interest on... Listen. No, 2003. Okay. Whatever it may be. It was whether it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee or it was Dr. Manmohan Singh.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Finish your point. Anand Gurumurthy, I'll come to you after that. Please go ahead.
And the interest goes around 9,800 rupees a year, which they have not paid for last 4 years. Instead, they have increased all taxes and cesses on the petrol, thereby collecting 4,53,000 crore rupees in a year, last year only. And they have collected more than 23 lakh crore rupees in the last 7 years. Why they are citing the example of paying only 1,31,000 crore plus 30,000 crores, 1,60,000 crores against 23 lakh crores? How they can justify this? I have made it more simple to the people of India. You are as if sucking blood from the bones of the people, thereby taxing every day.
All right. Let's.
Okay.
Let's let Anand Gurumurthy respond, please. Yes, Anand Gurumurthy, please go ahead.
Yes. See, again, all these fantastic numbers are made in media. Why doesn't Congress? They keep telling 20 lakh crores have been siphoned off, this, that. Why doesn't Congress, the opposition party, come inside the parliament and demand a white paper on it? Why doesn't it do it? Because these are all fake numbers that they keep throwing in the media. These are all fake numbers. Please stop doing this. Instead, you come inside the parliament, ask for a white paper, na? Because you are very clear that every rupee has been spent in the interest of nation.
P. Chidambaram sir has asked Nirmala Sitharaman about the NPA and about the oil bonds by giving her a letter. She has not explained anything. P. Chidambaram sir has asked about the NPA also and about the petrol bond
all right,
also.
this yelling is not going to help. Nobody is going to understand what points you are trying to make. Atul Londe, Anand Gurumurthy, this is not going to help. Can we please speak one at a time? Anand Gurumurthy, finish making your point. Atul Londe, I will come back to you.
Avni, there is no need to go to parliament. It is on the website of the Petroleum Ministry. If he has not time to see it, go and see it on your own site. And if you are talking about the
Ours is a parliamentary
democracy. Listen, Anand Gurumurthy ji, you people are not ready to discuss anything. You are not ready to discuss anything in the parliament. What you do?
All right. Atul Londe, Anand Gurumurthy has heard you. Your point has been taken. Let's let him respond, please. Anand Gurumurthy, please respond.
It is very straightforward. Congress keeps doing allegations, making allegations.
Yes, Anand Gurumurthy, please go ahead.
Congress Vice President has this habit of making false allegations in media. let him come to the parliament and ask for a white paper. If he's so interested, the government is ready to answer anything in the parliament. Why they are not doing that? Instead, they come with some fantastic numbers in media. In media houses, they come in debates and say this is the amount that is siphoned off. They did this for every time. Okay, whether it is with respect to even defense deals, which was a government to government deal, Rafael. They simply spoiled the entire atmosphere. But somehow Narendra Modi government was very clear. They ensured that nothing went wrong and we got the planes. Our western and the eastern sectors are now secure. So all this, they're not taking this seriously. They are just, throwing numbers, throwing fake stories in this thing. Somebody is writing some fake story and the Congress Vice President is coming in, telling it in the media, and then everybody is following it up on that in the newsrooms. Come to the parliament. You come to the parliament and ask whatever you want. You ask the government a white paper. That is your right as an opposition. Why don't you do that? Because you know very well that the government has answers, the government has numbers for everything, and you people are not going to be, you people are going to be in a very bad position before the people. That's why you don't want to do sit in the parliament and ask these questions. So first, I demand the Congress and all opposition parties come, attend the parliament, ours is a parliamentary democracy, have the discipline, come to the parliament, ask all the questions. And then even about the petrol prices and other things, you say oil bonds were never a burden, right? Now also you are telling further, your Congress Vice President is telling further, add a burden of 7,500 rupees. See, all these 7,500 rupees giving free and other things have already...
All right, Anand Gurmurthy, fair enough. I'm afraid we're completely out of time here, but I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. The fact here is that this discussion, this debate that we've had is on, it's on our channel and on this platform, and there is absolutely no consensus or any kind of coordination that can be seen between, the central BJP and the opposition parties. I wonder how long it's going to take for both sides to actually come together to address this issue, to bring fuel under GST, and until that happens, to reduce the prices of petrol and diesel, because it is extremely important. It is having a lot of far-reaching repercussions here as far as the economy is concerned, as far as our wallets are concerned, as far as the poor and the middle class, the kind of burden it has on that, the poor and the middle class is also something that is just not being considered. And every time excuses like the oil bonds, like the international prices, international production, all of that has no relevance to what needs to be done now, which is the tax component. That is what we are talking about, the tax component on petrol and diesel, which needs to be reduced. And right now, neither side, neither the center nor the states are willing to take the first step or are even willing to come together to discuss this issue. And that is going to be something that is going to hurt the economy in the long run. But this is, of course, a discussion that is going to continue even going forward, and we'll keep taking it up. Thank you for watching.